this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the circular flow model, or sometimes we'll call this a circular flow diagram. But it is an economic model because economic models are simplified versions of reality to help us visualize and understand the interconnected parts and how things work. And in this circular flow model, we are thinking about a simple representation of a macro economy, the entire economy and all the relationships between businesses and households and the resource market and the product market. So what we're looking at here in this circular flow model, going around the outside in green is the money. So we can follow what we call the money economy. Starting from the resource market up on the top here, this is where households sell resources to businesses. So households are selling their land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship to businesses and earning wages, rent, interest, and profit. So the businesses are spending money. The business's costs go through the resource market and through to the households on the right-hand side here. Once households get the money for selling their resources, they use that money to buy products and services. So they spend this money here, consumption expenditures, in the product market where businesses are selling products and households are buying products. And that money flows to the businesses as what we call total revenue. So businesses are buying resources, using those resources to sell products and services, and then spending the money they earn from selling those goods to buy more resources, to produce more goods and services. On the inside of the circular flow, we have what we would call the real economy. So the money economy in green, the real economy, by which we mean the stuff, the real tangible stuff, the goods and services that you can see and that you can touch. The resources, the land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship we talked about just a minute ago, flow from the households through the resource market to businesses, and then businesses produce those goods and services we were talking about, and that real stuff flows through the product market to the households who consume these goods and services. In addition to helping us visualize the overall economy, we can use this to think about how different events might impact what's going on in the economy. Let me give you an example. Suppose everything was going fine. The money was flowing around the outside and the goods and services and the resources were flowing around the inside and everything was fine until one day rumors start to be discussed about how, maybe there might be a recession or a depression coming soon. Maybe there's going to be a problem. This is just a rumor. Suppose there's no truth to it at all. But as long as people start to believe it, I want you to think about what kinds of impacts this rumor might start to have in the economy. We've seen this kind of thing quite often in the real world. Suppose you're a household, and households watch the news. They hear these rumors and they get scared. What might the households start doing if they think the breadwinners in the family might lose their jobs soon? Well, what's going to happen is they are going to start buying less products and services, right? So the amount of products and services they buy is going to go down. And let's follow the impact of that. These households are going to be spending less money on consumption expenditures. That means that less money is going to flow to businesses and total revenue. And once these businesses start earning less money, what are they going to do? Well, they are not going to be able to buy as many resources. And they're going to have to start laying some people off. They're not going to have the money to spend on the wages and the rent and the interest and the profit that we were talking about. And this rumor, this fear, it can actually cause a real recession or a real depression. So panic is one of the things that can have real effects in the real economy, even if there's no basis to it. So that's one thing that we can see in this kind of model, is that if we imagine that what goes around, has to keep flowing and flowing and flowing until there's something stopping up the flow, right? So there's some kind of panic. You can imagine how recessions and depressions could get started for no real reason at all. So this is why we're worried as economists about panics. They can have real effects. They can cause recessions and depressions to actually happen. Now let me show you two different real versions of the circular flow. And these are a little bit more complicated than the simple version. So let me show you a picture first. So what we're looking at here is a computer. It is a computer. It's not a digital computer that runs on electricity the way we usually think of. But this computer was created in 1949, and they called it the Moniac computer. Moniac. And Moniac was kind of a takeoff of a name of a real electronic computer of the time that was called ENIAC. So they called this the Moniac because this is kind of tracing the flow of money in the economy. It was created by a guy named Bill Phillips when he was at the London School of Economics. Bill Phillips was actually from New Zealand, but when he was at London School of Economics, he started thinking about this circular flow idea, and he said, you know, I bet I could build a whole economy with hoses and water flowing and pumps and valves and little graphs. And he did. And this thing that we're looking at here stands probably 7 feet tall, and you can see some valves down here, and you can see a lot of the hoses, and you can see the water flowing. And let me show you a brief clip of a video, and I'll leave a link to the complete video here so that you can watch it if you want to. But this is just fascinating to see somebody operating this. I'll just show you about 10 or 15 seconds here.
Some actual calculations to make some predictions and see if we can get the right answer. But I'll just close some things down. Put taxes. Balance the budget.
So to me, that's fascinating that you can not only build something like this that illustrates the economy, but it can actually be used to do calculations. If we zoom in here, there are a lot of little graphs that we see here and here that as little buckets start to fill up and start to empty, we can do some measurements on these things to see what's happening in this model of the economy. Of course, this isn't the real economy, but if we can create a machine that mimics the economy in some ways, it's just as good as a lot of mathematical models we might use in economics, perhaps better in some ways, to help us understand if we change something over here, right? If we close this valve, maybe that means a certain kind of business is spending less money. How does that impact GDP? How does that affect inflation and all kinds of other things? Kind of cool. Now let's look at our simple version. Let's talk about a couple of simple ways that we could expand on this simple version of a circular flow to learn about other ways that the economy might change. So one example might be we don't have government here anywhere. And in every country on earth, to one extent or another, the government plays a large role in the economy. So we could put a box over here for government. And what does government do? Well, there are a lot of things they do. They pass laws and they regulate things. But what if we just wanted to think about the government's interaction in the economy in terms of the money economy and the real economy? Well, one thing we know that government does is they tax. So they tax households. So households are going to be paying taxes to the government. And then what does the government do with that money? Well, the government probably is going to use some of that money to buy some goods and services. The government is probably also going to go into the resource market and hire some people. So they need some employees, and they're going to have to pay for those employees so they can send some money back to the households for government employees, right? Another thing businesses might do is they might look at these businesses over here and say, hey, how about we get some tax money from businesses? So you can kind of see how government could get involved in an economy like this. Now, let's think about that situation we were looking at just a minute ago. What if the government saw that we were getting into a recession or heading into a depression? Remember, our trigger for this was that consumers were really worried, and so consumers weren't buying as many products and services. Consumption expenditures were going down. That means that the total revenue for businesses is going down, and this was starting to create this vicious cycle where we were going to head into a recession, because if the businesses can't earn money, they can't hire people. What could the government possibly do to maybe step in and help this circular flow keep flowing better? Well, it depends on where the problem is, but one thing that the government of the United States has done several times recently is when we see that, say, households start to lose their jobs and they're not earning as much money, the government can step in and start, say, giving people tax refunds early, or cut taxes, mail them a check for $1,000. And once households have that extra money, they're probably going to start spending some of it and sending that money around in the circular flow again, right? If the problem seemed to be that the businesses weren't spending money, then perhaps what the government could do is, normally the government might have a lot of money in taxes that they take from businesses. The government might say, you know, for the next couple of months, businesses, we're not going to collect any taxes from you. And that might be a way to put more money back into the economy. And if these businesses aren't sending their money to the government, maybe that would mean more money that they could send around into the resource market and back into households' pockets and keep this circular flow going to get the economy going again. So that's one way we could expand this to add some other interesting ideas into this circular flow model. Now, another thing we could add, maybe this is the circular flow for one country. Maybe this is the United States economy that I have right here. Perhaps something else that we would want to build in is foreign trade, right? Other countries. How do foreign countries interact with the United States or Europe or whatever country or region we wanted to study here? Of course, foreigners send money to the product market and they buy our stuff. And of course, households from the United States, we send money back to other countries and we get their stuff. And businesses in the United States will also engage with other countries in the resource market. The United States, they might have people in a call center in the Philippines or in India or in other countries. And so businesses in the United States might send some money to these foreign countries, and in return, they might get some labor. So there are all kinds of ways we can think about interacting with foreign countries through different kinds of trade. And that's another way that we could build upon this model. So the circular flow model, it's an interesting, very simple way to picture what goes on in an entire economy, and all these complicated and complex relationships are simplified down into a very simple kind of picture that we can all understand. And we can also easily see how an economy can break by looking at how different parts of the flow might get stopped up and not flow like they should anymore. One final thing we can do with this circular flow model that's pretty interesting is we can imagine, what if we wanted to do some simple calculations with this sort of idea? And here's what I mean. If we add up all of the money that's flowing around this circular flow, the total has to equal GDP, or gross domestic product, right? So GDP, gross domestic product, we're just talking about what's the total value of all of the things that are bought and sold in an economy. Now, Macroeconomists, when they do this, they actually do it two different ways. One is called the income approach. The income approach tries to add up how much money is being earned in wages, rent, interest, and profits. In other words, it tries to add up all the money that are flowing from businesses to households here. Another way to try to calculate the value of GDP, and this way is also done every year by economists, is to try to add up the total value spent, trying to add up kind of this leg of the circular flow. Why do it two ways? Well, the main reason is, can you imagine how incredibly difficult, I mean, really impossible when you get down to it, but incredibly difficult it is to try to add up all the money that is flowing around in an economy during a given year? I mean, it really is impossible to do this perfectly accurately. So that's why we do it a couple of different ways. So suppose we know that if we do it one way, suppose we do the consumption expenditures way, we add up all the value of everything being bought and sold as, say, $150 billion for a given month. Maybe we're trying to do it the other way now. And by trying to get all the income together, we say, okay, well, maybe we have a really good source of data for wages, and we've figured out that wages is $50 billion. And we have figured out that rent, suppose we have a really good source of data for that too, maybe rent is $35 billion. And all the interest, maybe that's really easy to calculate as well, because we can look at all the financial transactions and banks and things like that, and we can get the interest. It's $25 billion. But suppose we don't have a really good way to calculate the profit. Well, how could we figure that out? The idea here simply is that if this 150 billion number should check out to be the same as what we get if we take wages plus rent plus interest plus profit, trying to calculate GDP in a different way, then we can figure out what profit needs to be. Very simply, well, 50 plus 35 plus 25 plus whatever that profit amount is needs to equal $150 billion. Okay, you tell me. How much does the profit have to be? Think about it. Well, the wages, rent, and interest here add up to $110 billion plus profit has to equal 150. That means that the profit has got to be equal to $40 billion, right? So that's a simple kind of problem that you'll see students asked to do in a lot of economics courses. So I'm going to end this short video here. If you have any other questions or comments, please let me know. I'd be happy to talk about this more. This is Dr. Berkey signing out. I wish you the best of luck in your studies.